people have written to the council?
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
and that's
yeah,
why I got invited to the Foothills Park discussion, was because I wrote to the council.
Yeah, so let me kind of preface this. So Stefan, thank you for joining. So the topic now is Foothills Park. So as you guys probably know, we're going to be discussing this at tomorrow's council meeting. And I've gotten a ton of email on this. And the purpose of this office hours is for me to, I usually hold these right before the actual council meeting, because what I want to do is I want to get input from the community on this topic. And so Stephanie joined a little bit late, but this is now Facebook Live, so just to let you know. So Aiden, if you could see people that email you that want to join in the conversation, you could send them the Zoom information and then let them in as needed. And so typically what I do is I do office hours on topics that are going to come up. Like I do office hours on Sundays, and we talk about topics that are going to happen the next day, basically. And that way I'm a little bit more informed about people's opinions and thoughts, so I can hear the different perspectives. So so maybe what we could do is we could just go quickly around where people could just quickly introduce themselves and then talk about their perspective on the Foothills Park topic. So maybe Dan and Leslie, I think. Yeah. Maybe you guys could just quickly introduce yourself and just say a few words on that topic, and then Rose, and then Stephen. So Dan, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
Well, we're hoping that the park remains with its current situation. I first wrote to Greg because I had a situation this week, actually, on Thursday, that I went to hike with a friend, and we were going to meet at Rastradera Preserve, and there was no room to park there. It was so overcrowded. People weren't social distancing at all. It just was not a safe environment. We decided to go up to Foothill Park, and it was lovely. There we had a lot of wild animal sightings, and you know, it was a good, comfortable environment. So Dan and I actually drove again over to Foothill on Friday just to see at a different time of the day. I had gone at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you know, it's a little bit earlier than some people would go, and it was a lot more crowded on Friday. And we actually went this morning at 11:30 and counted the number of cars that were in the park when we were there, and it was 120, including our car, and an extra 3 or 4 that appeared to be maybe vehicles of people that were working there. And you know, that felt like a lot to me, just on a normal day where there's no picnicking allowed even. So it seemed very full, and to add more people to that, I think, would be sad.
Yeah, this you got to understand, right now there's limited use really of the park because there's no picnicking, so people can't use the picnic areas, but the parking lots were pretty darn full. And this is Palo Alto residents. There was a ranger at the gate and so on. And this is with Palo Alto residents. I think in the note that I had sent to you before, Greg, that I sent, you know, our experience with Rinconada and with Mitchell Park on a summer weekend to try to get a table to have a picnic is very difficult. Now, right now, it's not because of the COVID thing, and people can't use the tables. But you know, historically, trying to use those parks because they are open to everyone. So the idea of having a park that is just available to Palo Alto residents, I think, is a good one. And by the way, not racist or elitist or anything like that. It's just, we pay for it. And we bought it. We pay for the maintenance all, you know, every year and so on. And, you know, I grew up in New York on Long Island, where there were city beaches. You know, there were town beaches because there's towns, not cities, out on Long Island. So there's town beaches along Jones Beach. There's the state park, but then each town has its own beach that you need to be a town resident to use. It's not unusual to me that's a function, and I never thought of it as being elitist because there were other beaches. I don't think that it's elitist for us to have a park that the city residents can use, because there are 32 other parks that everybody else can use in the city. So it's not like, so I don't quite understand all of that argument and so on. So that's our position, is we use it quite a bit to go up and picnic and go up with family and so on and so forth. And it would be a shame to go up there and say, gee, there's no space available.
Thank you, Dan and Leslie. Okay, Rose, do you want to say just quickly introduce yourself and give your perspective, and then Stephen?
Okay, yeah. So my name's Shannon Rose McAtee, and I live just a couple of blocks from California Avenue. I've been in this condo for 25 years in this area since 1971. Dan, I just want to thank you for that comment about the beaches being private and that you need a city ID to go on those beaches. That'd be a wonderful editorial for the weekly, or something like that, because that's been a big part of the argument, is that that we need to share, and we're not the only ones, and I think people forget that. So anyway, just my points are, it is not a large park, but it is a very tranquil park because it is not overrun. And so because it is tranquil, the birds and the bees and the deer and the humans and other species, we can be comfortable there together. And I would say that we should protect that at all costs. And that we do not owe any surrounding communities access to that when we're paying all the bills. And even more important, there are plenty of parks around here: Arrastradero, Montebello, Blancos, and then further up the hill, Russian Hill, Purissima, tons of parks that are fantastic. So it's not like all the people that aren't residents can't go to a park. So that's a really specious argument. Another thing I would say is, and I think perhaps you said this in comments, Greg, is that to try and do this, I think that the people that are pushing, organizations are trying to tag along on that, and that's completely specious, because we are not a racist park. If you live in Palo Alto and you're Black, you're Hispanic, you're Asian, anybody can go there if you live in Palo Alto. So it is not racist, and that's just garbage. I had a thought just in the last day since I wrote to the park, or to the council, and that is that if people are going to keep pushing, one other thought. So right now, to try to do this, to even have the discussion in the middle of this pandemic, when city staff has been reduced, when people are working from home and it is much harder and more time consuming, and it's hard to reach anybody on the city phones. I think that this is a dreadful time to even address this. This should be addressed when the pandemic's under control, if ever. So that's one point. And then the other thought that I had just, like yesterday was, well, if they want that land so badly, what the city should do then, this is an option. I'm not suggesting that it's an option. We should sell that park to the Peninsula Open Space Trust and let them manage it and pay for everything with their resources, instead of our city opening it and handling all those costs and letting everybody in. It just does not make sense for Palo Alto to open it to the wider peninsula. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Shannon, for sharing your thoughts. Stephen, followed by Todd. Oh, you're muted, by the way. I think you're muted, Stephen. You're on mute. Oh, you're still muted. Still can't hear you.
He's okay now. He's okay.
No?
Yeah. Can you guys hear us, Stephen? Or is it just me?
No,
or?
can't hear him.
Yeah, we can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
we hear you now. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I had an audio interface plugged in that I thought I disabled. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I am a longtime user of Foothill Park. My wife and I have gone up there many, many, many times over the years. I think that this is, on the one hand, what I'd say is I think this is a pretty nuanced situation. First of all, I think the usage of the park is the numbers that we're seeing in the park right now are not indicative of the numbers when there isn't a pandemic. So when I go to the park now, I see a great many more people than I would see normally. I mean, having gone for years, I'm aware that this is really the only opportunity to get out of your house. The same thing is true at Arrastradero. During the week, usually Arrastradero Preserve was never a problem. Under the pandemic, it's a big problem. But I will say the experience of years of trying to go to Rancho San Antonio and being turned away meant more often than getting in, to be honest, to park. This has to be handled with such care. If the park were to be opened up at all, 120 cars, I agree with Dan, it's a problem when you see 120 cars in there, when people are not, when we have to have a real assessment of what kind of an impact opening up the park would have on usage. That I think is important. The other thing is that I agree that the history of owning the park is such that it's a bit odd for Palo Alto to bear the brunt of the cost. The history of the thing is Los Altos, and in particular Los Altos, but if other communities want to use the park, they should pony up some money to use the park. It doesn't make sense for Palo Alto to see this as being their responsibility to pay for it, especially under the circumstances of budget cuts this year. So I think we're in a very special situation where the park is being used in an inordinate amount compared to usual because it's the only option for people to get out, one. And the second thing is that if we do decide to open it up, I don't think Palo Alto should be the one to bear the cost. I personally could see a controlled environment in which we could open up the park to other communities, but I would on only Palo Alto's nickel. And I would want to understand what the impacts are usually for being in the park under non-pandemic conditions. So I agree that making these decisions during the pandemic is also pretty tricky. I don't think it's very easy to do, but I think we must have usage numbers over the years, don't we?
Well, I think the challenge is that like, for instance, I've gone to Foothills Park many times. I'm part of this walking group that goes there, but every time I've gone there, there's never anyone at the gate. So I think it's hard to know because we don't have really good numbers, right? But okay, so let's let Todd go. Todd, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and just talk about your perspective?
Sure. Hey, Todd Burke. I live on California Avenue here in Palo Alto. I actually am not deeply, I don't fall really hard on either side of the issue. I do sort of think Foothills is kind of great in the sense that it's one of the few not just wildly overcrowded parks. But I also think that this issue has to be treated with some care because there's some concern that the exclusionary aspect of the park may not be for the best reason, which I don't agree with that necessarily, but it's a sensitive topic. And I can kind of see both sides. I think leaving it as is and doing nothing would probably be a bit of a mistake. Opening it up and just saying, okay, anybody can come in, I think that would be a mistake. I think doing any next step would have to be done carefully and under the guidance of under some thoughtful data collection. I've seen in the Palo Alto Online and some various comments people have made that maybe local communities should pay for it. Honestly, those that take advantage of the park probably need to pay for it. Maybe there's a way that we charge visitors and one amount and people who live in Palo Alto a different amount. I mean, I haven't really thought to be too honest. I realize Dan and Rose and Stephen have had you guys use the park way more than I do, I'm sure. Obviously, I've never met you there, so my apologies, which I need to. But yeah, I think, Greg, this is one of those things where it's going to require a bit of careful debate. And I'm also a little lost as to how it got sort of tied into being a racial issue, which I don't quite see it as that as well. It just is peculiar. But regardless, I think any one sort of swift direction and move in any direction is probably the wrong thing. I think it needs to be done carefully, at the right time, and over time. So that's just sort of my seemingly not taking a stand position, because I don't have a position. So sorry, Greg, but.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Okay, so this is actually the second discussion I've had on Foothills Park. I had it once before, but this is back in June. But in June, what happened was we had, like, you guys probably heard, we had like massive budget issues in the city, and so we had probably one of the most onerous budget set of budget meetings we've had maybe in the history of the city. So it was really, really difficult. And so we had budget meetings that went from like starting at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and going all the way until like midnight, past midnight. So we had, I don't know, 30, 40 plus hours of budget hearings. And as a result, that kind of pushed out some topics like this one. So I had this right before, I think on Sunday, and then the hearing was supposed to happen on Tuesday, but it got pushed out because of the budget hearing went overtime. Anyways, so I definitely heard the different perspectives last time and this time as well. I've also done a poll, so I don't know if anyone here has got my. Oh, it sounds like some people have. So I've done a poll just to try to, I didn't want to like spam a bunch of people, so we tried to do a random survey, like basically, and so we've probably got about 200 or so responses, and because I wanted to hear people's perspective, because a lot of times you hear only just the people who are very adamant about something, right? And not really a broad base. So I wanted to kind of understand at a broader base. And so far in the survey, and it's hard to tell because I want to hit about 300 surveys at least, maybe more. But for the people I've heard from so far, it seems like the vast majority want to keep it as is, at least for right now. But we're going to get more survey results, and we'll
Hey, Greg, did you listen to Jeff's YouTube or the meeting that they had the other day about this whole thing?
I read about it. I didn't actually watch the video. I heard. I think I had a meeting at the same exact time as that one, so I didn't. Yeah. I didn't watch it live.
And it's 2 hours long, so it's not. So it's not something that you just sit down and do. But I did. There, just for some of my feedback, some of the things that came up. Sure. They said that that the information, the data that they have is not very good. Yeah. But they said there's an average of 2.5 people in a car, and that's not really right. Not on a weekend. On
not
a weekend,
what we were looking at today, anyway.
During the week, yeah, maybe Leslie and I would go up there ourselves. But on a weekend, people are going up there to picnic, and you got 4 to 5 people in a car. So the number of cars versus the number of people is not really a good thing. The other thing that kept being brought up on the call is that it's a wildlife preserve. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of turkeys, deer, everything, and somebody had said, well, we can just try to monitor what happens, whether there's an impact on that. And somebody else, one of the people from Stanford had said, no, with wildlife, once it happens, it's gone.
It's too late to fix it.
It's not like, oh, well, it'll come back next week, you know, or something. No, once they're driven out, they're gone. And so it's, I mean, those are some other ideas that had come up in there. I was trying to look at my notes and so on. So, I mean, these are just some things to think about when you're making your decision.
Stephen, why don't you go ahead?
I was surprised to hear that the kids who are volunteering at the far end of the park doing the plantings and things like that and doing cleaning up, that their families, that they don't have some kind of special dispensation to use the park if they're not from Palo Alto. And I kind of feel that's weird. I think if they're doing the work, if they're pulling weeds, if they're pulling invasive plants and doing work to make the park, they should have a right to be in the park.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So that felt a little strange. But I agree, 2.5, who said 2.5 people per car?
That's what they quoted in.
I know, it's like, it seems weird. It seemed weird because I figured on the weekend, if people are allowed in, there's going to be 4 or 5. Other days, there's going to be 1. There have been times when I go on weekdays when it's 1 person per car running in the park. So it's a pretty tough thing to know the data on.
I know for the walking club thing that I don't go to them very much anymore, but when I did, it was pretty much 1 person per car. So
exactly.
I don't know. I think it depends on who what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Greg, when did you go up there, Greg? Was it just recently?
No, I used to go there. I used to go up there every I think it was every Saturday morning. I think every Saturday morning I would go up there.
Because of course, right now during the pandemic, people are driving alone. I drove 5 hours alone to go camping up in the Sierra, so that's why I wondered when you did it. I would like to make another comment. You know, wasn't it 1959 when they bought the land?
Something like that.
I think it was 59. And at that time there was racism, and there still is racism, but that park was not a racist idea. It wasn't to keep any other races out. All the surrounding communities were invited to participate, and they declined. And I think it's really, really important to stress that this has never been a race issue. Right. And for them to try and make it one now, I think is really,
it just irks me.
Yeah, it's just not true. And I think that they should be stopped in their tracks on that point. No matter what happens, that shouldn't be allowed to keep going on. And I've been actually just dumbfounded at some of our leaders like LaDoris Cordell, who I respect immensely, and that she's, you know, a proponent of that based on race issues. That's just crazy.
Yeah,
and let me support something that Rose had said before. At this point in time, in the financial situation that the city is in, the personnel that need to be hired is not one gate attendant on a weekend. You know, it's a lot of
infrastructure.
It's maintenance. It's and so on. You got restrooms out there. You got garbage cans out there. You got everything that needs to, and you need to have somebody wandering around making sure that everybody is safe. There is no cell phone reception up there. So it's not like, hey, I need an ambulance. You need to have people wandering around making sure that everybody is safe. So it's an impact if you start to grow the number of people that are going to be in there and so on. Yeah, anyway.
Needs careful assessment, because even the existing bathrooms, if they were all working now, if we had a lot of people in that park, it wouldn't be adequate. It's really, there's not enough bathrooms in the park for this.
That's for sure.
And you probably don't want people deciding that other places are a bathroom. So, you know, it's just, I think this needs a lot of assessment. I agree that the history of the park is so unique, it needs to be repeated over and over again. The history of the acquisition of the land and what it was designed to do. It was sort of like the first open space project, if you want to think of it that way. The idea that the city decided that maintaining a park, I think that cannot be emphasized enough, so that people understand this was not
the park, preserving the park.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and
how many of you guys attended the video discussion that they had last week on this topic?
I didn't.
No.
I didn't hear about it, but I think, did they cover it in the Palo Alto Weekly? Because I read that carefully. And I think many of the same points have been covered in the weekly.
Leslie, did you attend that, or Dan?
No, no. I mean, I just got fervent about this because of my experience this week and the weekly ad again also. And I just kind of went, oh my God, I have to say something.
Okay, no problem. Okay, guys, I have to jump to my next one, but thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to.
Greg, thank you for facilitating these meetings. It's wonderful. Thank you.
It really helps me to understand the issues better. So thank you so much for everyone for your perspective.
And it helps give us a voice. So thank you.
Thanks for doing this, Greg.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.